Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Spend with Intention Budgeting for What Matters webinar here with Wings Credit Union. My name is Jared Little. Even though it says Bree Shalito under my name, I'm using her account from Legacy Ent. I'm part of our community impact team, and I'm based here in the Twin Cities of Minnesota. And this is our first of three webinars for Financial Literacy Month. And this is one of our core subjects. When you think about save, spend, and borrow, those are kind of the core subjects that a lot of us have to deal with all the time in our financial lives. And this is the first one for Financial Literacy Month. So, again, welcome. For the next 30 minutes, we're going to be talking about a lot of different things, primarily related to budget and cash flow, but we're going to kind of dip all over the place. Wherever you are today, whether you are in Colorado, Minnesota, another Midwest, some state, somewhere in our beautiful United States, so happy you could join us today for this awesome daytime webinar. So again, I'm part of the community impact team. I serve here as an education specialist. I've been here about 4 years. My job is to present financial literacy content to our community partners and schools all over, really wherever I'm needed. So today it's with you guys. So we're going to talk, like I said, about budgeting. So let's get going. So what are we going to talk about today? First of all, we're going to zoom 30,000 feet. We're going to look at a budget, why it's important. This is a subject you may have talked about before, whether you took a personal finance class in school, whether you learned this from your parents, other adults in your life. These are good reminders because these are skills that as adults we need to be doing. If we're not doing, there's always different ways to improve. If your situation is not as ideal as I described today, that's okay. Our goal here is to give you resources. Our goal here is to give you strategies to try to improve your financial life just a little bit more. Our hope is that you have some kind of takeaway. So we're going to talk big picture, why we do this, why we bother. We're going to talk strategies, and then I'm going to share a bunch of resources with you today. So, first of all, what is a budget? What does this word actually mean? Now, I spend a lot of time in my job talking about things like credit cards, talking about things like investments, talking about loans, interest rates, different accounts for retirement, all kinds of things. Honestly, none of the rest of that stuff really matters unless you have taken the time to make a budget. The budget is your financial plan, and a plan is the correct word from it. Sometimes I'll use the word budget with folks and they'll look at me like, ugh, I don't want to have a limit on my money. It's more than that. It can be a limit, of course, but think of it as a plan. It's a picture of your money that's coming and your money that's going. And it's a way for you to prioritize what your money's actually doing for you. Remember, personal finance is personal, and money is just a tool for you to buy your needs and wants. And that's all it is. So the budget is the tool for your tool. Now, a lot of folks will be confused about the word budget and the word cash flow. Sometimes these two things are used interchangeably, and I think it's important that we define what these two terms actually mean. If you think of the budget as your overarching plan for your money, think of the cash flow as what's actually happening on a monthly, weekly, daily basis with your money. Cash flow just means we have enough money in our account to move in and out. In the world of banking, we might call that liquidity. You have money in there to meet your needs, to meet your wants, to pay your bills. So the cash flow is the budget actually executing. Income minus expenses, that's your actual cash flow, right? And really, the only way to make a budget better is, well, two things. You can decrease expenses, you can increase income. At the end of the day, that's really all you can do. Or some combination of the two is even better. But if your budget does not look as good as you would like it to, those are the two first things that you need to consider. But of course, you don't know what your expenses are. You don't maybe even know what your income is unless you take the time to make a budget. A lot of people do budgets up here, right? What I'm going to try to convince you to do today is to take it a step further and get it in writing in some sort of way. Now, it's important to have saving as part of our budget. A lot of people don't think of it this way, but saving is something that's one and the same with your budget. A budget is a plan for your money. Saving is something that your money is doing for you. Now, we're going to dive a little bit deeper when we get into our Saving with Purpose webinar. If you decide to join us for that, that'll be on Thursday, April 23rd. we're going to dive more deeper into the art of saving, how to really maximize it for you, more than we can cover in the scope of today. But when we think about saving, we really need to think about three important baskets when we are looking to allocate our money. The first one is just periodic saving. So things like, your car fund in case your car breaks down. Things like saving for household goods. I know people who have pet savings accounts, just kind of for different purposes, vacations, those kind of things. And then we have emergency savings. And there's kind of a wide range of what you could constitute as an emergency in your life. A car repair could be an example, a medical repair, really anything. I have to pull some money out of my emergency fund this month to pay a tax bill that I thought I'd get a return. I actually owe some, so I have to pay some. I would call that an emergency. So emergency, a little bit different than periodic, right? It's kind of a fund. It sits there just in case you need it. And then long-term savings are things like retirement, things like long-term healthcare. We call those savings, those funds should be invested, hopefully, again. But these three buckets are really the different pots that you want to allocate your savings funds into. So, first things first, when we make a budget, the first thing we have to do is we have to take charge of our financial lives and we have to see what we are working with. And that means we need to know our income and we need to know our expenses. This can be the tricky part for some people, but I think it's kind of the fun part too. So, the first step, let's look at income. This is 50% of your budget, right? The income is going to be all your income sources. For most of us, this is going to be our jobs, and this is going to be our regular paychecks. If you have a side hustle, that could be part of your income. Any investment income, whether you're part of a trust, there's a lot of different ways income could be coming into your life. But your core income coming in every single month, this is what you need to identify. Now, we are building a budget to meet our expenses. So we're going to be looking at our net pay, not our gross pay. There's a lot of different ways that we can manipulate our net pay, change our 401k allocations. We can obviously file something different with the IRS if we wanted to pay more or less taxes, but then you'd have to make good with them at the end of the year. But the net pay is what you're going to be looking for, of course. And it's ideal to not include bonuses in your monthly budget because this is windfall money. So what this means is if we only get bonuses or, you get an inheritance or something that comes out of nowhere, that shouldn't be part of your budget because that's not incoming and outgoing money on a regular basis. It's a great problem to have if you get those because you can allocate that money to whatever you may need it for, savings, extra debt, those kind of things. But we don't want to plan for it every single month because it's a windfall, only shows up every month. Now, last thing I want to say is if you're a person who's, let's say you're a server, bartender, you live off of tips, your income is maybe variable, it's best to just take an average and kind of go to the low end of this. So your lowest monthly average, that way it gives you some kind of picture of what to expect. It's not easy doing it this way, but just do your best to estimate if you have a variable income, and a lot of folks do. So the next part is expenses. Now, I think this part's a little trickier than income because expenses can be all over the place and sometimes we can miss them. So this is where you're going to have to do a little bit of legwork here. Ideally, we would do the last 30 to 90 days of our transactions. I always like to tell people monthly budgets are usually the best because that's when most bills are due. But for instance, there are some bills that are not due monthly. So for instance, I pay for my trash quarterly. That's not a monthly budget. So my trash pickup comes out quarterly. I just take the average monthly throughout the year and put it in my own budget like that. If you're paying annually for insurance, try to average that out. If you have some bills that are sort of periodic, a couple times a year, just do a monthly average if you can. But take a look at them, fixed versus variable. We're going to talk about that in a little bit if you don't know what those kind of things means. And then take a look at some of the patterns. If you've never done this before, this can really be an eye-opening experience for you to sort of take a look at your situation. And you might identify some expenses you either didn't know you had or you didn't know you were paying that much. This is kind of where you need to figure out if the math is mathin', right? Because eventually you're going to take your income, subtract your expenses, and see how you're doing and what you have left over, right? Now, it's important to include savings as an expense. This is something that is a little bit different than traditional thinking. A lot of people don't think of it this way, but saving is an expense because that money is, even though you're keeping it, it's going somewhere that you get to access sometime. It's considered an expense, right? It's going into a savings account. It is working for you in some sense, even though it's not actually being spent, right? And debt payments are expenses as well. That money, of course, is going to some debt that you have, covering interest and principal. That, of course, is an expense. So just a couple of quick little tips here. And this is sort of good to keeping you taking charge of your finances. Try to check your bank account sometime in the morning, right? If you can. You don't have to do this every day, but do it at a time where you're relaxed. You can put your energy towards it. Um, Ideally, you take a look at your spending every week. This is not realistic for everybody, but Friday is a good idea a good time to do that. Move money into savings on payday. Automate things. I'm going to say this again before the webinar is over. I am a big fan of automating as much as you can in your financial life. If you're not paying your bills automatically from your bank account, definitely look to get that set up. If you have to think about it, you might not do it, right? So have it automate. We live in 2026. There's really no reason to not automate as much as we can so we don't have to think about it. Our budget should work for itself. It should be passive once we get it going. And then just set some reminders. If you're a person that needs reminders, use your calendar, write it down, whatever you need to do to check in on your goals. So let's talk a little bit about fixed expenses, what this means, because these are the two basic types of expenses when we get into this category. So your rent and your mortgage, this is always going to be your biggest expense. There are circumstances where this may not be the case. Maybe you're living at home. Maybe you have a bunch of roommates and your rent and mortgage is low. That's a great situation to be in. But for most people, this is going to be the biggest expense. Also, in most cases, that's not going to change on a month-to-month basis. Of course, rent can go up at the end of a lease if you renew a lease. Mortgages can go up and down depending on a lot of different factors, but mostly these are payments you can plan ahead for, and that helps you work your budget around that. And then things like phone and internet, things like your monthly streaming services, these can go up too, but mostly these are things you can plan for. So that's what a fixed expense is. The variable expenses are a little trickier because these can fluctuate. The nice thing about variable expenses is the fact that we can control some of these to some extent. If you live in an area where there's a lot of choices for grocery shopping, like a big city, you can go and try to find who's got the lowest prices for groceries, right? You can shop around, be a good consumer, always shop around. But things like utilities, gas, this can fluctuate based on the season. If you live in a seasonal state, we can't control the price of gas, of course. It's going higher right now because of geopolitical events. And then things like entertainment, personal expenses, these things you can control to some extent from month to month. So these are the things that are going to change, and it's hard to approximate these. When I make my own variable expenses in my own budget, I like to plan ahead and just give myself a certain budget for entertainment, for instance, for a month. I also overestimate on gas prices. I usually give myself about $200 a month, even though I don't usually get close to that, just because gas can fluctuate, right? So do your best to plan ahead. If you go back 30, 90 days, look at what you have been spending on these categories, then you can say, okay, this is about what I spend. This is where I want to be. Maybe give yourself a little allowance as to what you're actually spending in these variable categories. So, the personal part of personal finance. When you make your budget, of course, you allocate money to your needs first, right? Once your needs are met, it's what those wants are. This is where you get to decide. This is the fun part. What do you want your money to actually do for you? Remember, it's a tool for you to live your life, right? Do you want to allocate more money towards your family? Do you value security? Do you want to save more? Do you want to retire early? Spend time with your friends? Do you like to go outdoors? What sort of allocation do you want your money to do? Make it work for you, not the other way around, right? Get your budget in place, build it to your life. That's the fun part, and this is the part that you get to make your own. So here's just a sample budget here. Again, there's a lot of different ways that you can do this that we're going to talk about in a minute here. But at the end of the day, this is just to make sure the math works out. You're just taking your income minus your expenses. This is a person who is making $3,000 per month and spending $3,000 per month, right? You can do it this way. You can do it a lot of different ways. But again, at the end of the day, you're giving your dollars a job. That's always how I like to describe budgeting to people. Your money is working for you. You give every dollar a job. If it's working for you, it's doing things properly. It's up to you to manage this, right? So this here is a sample pie chart of sort of an ideal percentage of a budget allocation. You can really get into the weeds about this, and there's a lot of financial planners out there with a lot of different resources. If you do a quick Google search of, American budget pie chart, you're going to see a lot of different graphics. This is a simple one, but generally speaking, about 30% or less of your income for housing is considered to be pretty safe of an allocation for your money. Now, I say that, and I tell you, or will tell you, that I personally know people who are spending 50% just on housing. And that's pretty unsustainable. The more you spend in one category, the less you have in other categories, right? 30% is supposed to be considered safe. That means you have enough resources to allocate towards other aspects of your life, your needs, and some of your wants, of course. When we think about the term cost of living, what that usually means is housing. Of course, housing costs can vary hugely depending on where you are, right? So somebody who lives in a high cost of living city like New York, their budget might look a lot different than somebody who lives in a place like Kansas, right? Now, of course, the availability of high income jobs varies wildly depending on these areas as well, right? Not everybody's budget's going to look the same, but this is supposed to be a good sort of ballpark to shoot for. And this kind of follows a model known as the 50-30-20 model. And this has kind of been conventional wisdom in personal finance circles for a long time. So, what this means is 50% of your money goes towards needs, 30% towards wants, and 20% towards savings. If you can actually save 20% of your income, you are doing great. That's far, far above the national average. And of course, saving takes practice, saving takes discipline. Not everybody is really able to save. It's just not an easy thing to do, but it's a good ballpark to shoot for. And again, it could be any combination of these that I showed you here, but 50-30-20, again, sort of a sustainable model for most folks. So, as we get into the nitty gritty of budgeting, we talked about expenses, income, just making the math, if you will. There are a number of actually specific ways to build a budget, and these are just four of the most common ones out there. And I will say that most people who actually do budget check it regularly, stay on top of these things, they're going to do some combination of these. There's not really a true tried and tested way to do it. It's really kind of whatever works for you, right? I like to say to people, you can do a budget on a napkin at a bar if you want, or you can use a fancy spreadsheet. It's really entirely up to you. But just talking about some of these cool budget tactics, the envelope one is one that we like to highlight. And this could be as actually old school as you having actual envelopes and putting cash in them. This is my budget for groceries. This is my budget for dining out, etc., with actual cash. It's 2026. Most money is digital. If you're not a cash person, you can do this in a lot of different ways. Put your money in different buckets. You can make different accounts for this. Name the accounts what you want them to be. You can have a checking account just for paying your mortgage. You can have a checking account just for your food budget. You can separate it any way you want to. So if an envelope can be digital too. The money's just in buckets for different categories. Zero sum budgeting means every dollar has a job, like I was talking about earlier. This means all of your earnings go somewhere and you're left with zero at the end of the month. So that means that money went to your savings, it went to your retirement, it went to pay your bills, it went to a fun pot. Every dollar did something for you. This is a great way to budget if you have that kind of discipline and you can make a plan and execute it like this. Automatic, of course, I'm going to say again, automate as much as you can. Your bills, your savings, your investments, all that stuff should be automatic. It is really easy to set this up. Through Wings, we have a lot of different ways to automate things. Most bill can be paid automatically all the time with digital money. It's 2026. Get on that bandwagon if you're not. And then just the concept of reverse budgeting. This is also known as pay yourself first, which is a phrase we use a lot here in our financial literacy programs. Pay yourself first means you save first and you budget after the fact. This is a good way to force your hand to make you save a certain percent, and then you build your budget as if that money was just gone. Your savings, take that 20%, build the rest of the budget. Savings is a non-negotiable in a reverse budget strategy. So as we get into budgeting, there's a lot of different tools out there that can be used. Again, it's 2026. We can do this in a lot of different ways. If you are a spreadsheet person, if you like Excel, if you like Google Docs and you want to make a spreadsheet, absolutely go for it. There's also a number of free spreadsheets available online. Just do a quick Google search, free budget spreadsheets. You can find them, you can download them. They take the thinking away from you. You can allocate different categories. You can change it, manipulate it anytime you want. And a lot of these are done in real time. You can type in your income, your expenses. You can see what you have left over in real time, which is really, really cool. Great way to do this. If you're a pencil and paper person, absolutely do this. Interestingly, just in my meeting with my colleagues yesterday, we were talking about whether all of us in our community impact department actually takes the time to budget. Most of us do. Thankfully, we practice what we preach, right? But a few of my colleagues actually prefer pencil and paper. If you're a person that likes to have things written down, have a nice budget on paper every month, absolutely you absolutely. Journaling, of course, making a money diary if that's good for you as well. But in addition to building one from scratch, there's also a number of apps out there that will do it for you. Some of these will actually even connect to your bank account so that you can see your cash flow, your income, your expenses happening in real time. And some of them nowadays even have AI tools that will tell you how you are doing. You can check in with them, which is kind of cool. So a couple of examples there. First of all, the world of budgeting apps is a very overwhelming world. If you start getting into this, it's a deep rabbit hole. One website I like to recommend to a lot of people is Bankrate or NerdWallet. Both of those are sort of third-party websites that vet financial products. They usually have articles monthly, and they take a look at some of the best budget apps out there. If you go to Bankrate, go to NerdWallet, type in budget app. They review these. They let you know the costs, everything up front, so you can make the decision on which one's best for you. But just a couple of them out here that are free. Good Budget has been around a long time. That's a free app. Every Dollar is a really good one. I've used that one for a couple of years. Credit Karma, if you're not familiar with them, that's a good kind of catch-all site where you can see credit reports, your credit score in real time, and they do have some budgeting services as well. And here at Wings, we actually in our interface, we have some budgeting resources you can utilize as well, which is pretty awesome. So again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just a good idea to get this down on paper so you can see what your situation is, and then you can pivot from there. So where your money might be slipping away. Once you get that budget done, once you take a look at your situation, your math, what your expenses are doing, what your income is doing, now it's time to take a look at your habits, right? Again, this is the personal side. This is the psychological side, right? The math is there. The math doesn't lie. The math is on that sheet. It's there for you. You can see your numbers. So what are we going to do? If we see something we don't like, it could be a fee that you forgot about. For years, I was paying a fee that I didn't catch. It was an old streaming service I wasn't using anymore. That thing sat for 6 months before I managed to get rid of it. And it was crazy. I'm a very, astute with my money, and I still kind of slipped away from me because it was on a credit card that I didn't use very much and was stuck on auto pay. So these things happen. We're busy working adults. It's really easy to forget these things. So gathering them all in one place, looking at those past credit card, debit card statements, putting it all in one place, now you can see these things. Unexpected social spending is a big one too. There's a new trend on TikTok nowadays. I could talk a lot about this. A lot of Gen Z people talk about what's called loud budgeting, which is the concept of if you are invited to a social event and maybe you can't afford to go to the social event, you point to your budget as the reason why you can't. I think it's kind of cool. Gen Z is really clever with these kind of things. It's loud budgeting. Sorry, I can't go to dinner with you tonight. It's not part of my budget. Doesn't mean I don't like you. It's just not part of my budget. I'm going to be open and honest with you instead of putting that on my credit card and incurring some debt because I just feel like I need to join you for that reason. So, again, social things come up all the time. It's hard to plan for those because sometimes they're spontaneous, right? And of course, we're humans and we're going to impulse buy. Even me, I teach personal finance. I still buy things impulsively sometimes. Sometimes it happens. It's hard to stop those sometimes. We live in a hyper consumerist economy. We are all very vulnerable to marketing of, the marketers of the world and the businesses of the world telling us what we need rather than us telling us what we need. It's important that we take charge of this. So there's a lot of different things to do. This is what we call the budget busters. What is influencing our budget? Make that list and stick to it. Try to review your budget as often as you can. And I like to tell people if you are going to make a purchase, especially a big purchase, give it 24 hours. Or even better, if you're at the store and you're looking at an item and it may or may not be in your budget, and you look at that item and think, okay, I want to buy this, but do I really want to buy this? Will this thing make my life better? If the answer is maybe, it's probably no. Okay, that's something I want to leave you with there today. But just remember your values. Just remember there's a lot of businesses, a lot of companies out there that want our money more than at least they think that we do, right? We get to control what we buy. We get to vote with our money, right? Our budget is just our plan to do that. There's also one on here, consider money dates. If you have a spouse, if you have a partner that you're living with, be open with them about money. Sit down, talk through your budget. If you have a shared budget, make sure you're communicating with your partner about that budget. So, I'm going to leave you with this, with the last couple minutes that we have. I want you to try one new thing with your budget this week. That is my challenge for you. Here are your three options. Number one, take 2 minutes to just notice your money. Look at some of your transactions. Look at your last 5 transactions. Are there any trends? Is there anything that surprises you? Is there anything that horrifies you? Here's your second option. Make one thing in your financial life a little simpler. Cancel a subscription you don't use. Evaluate your subscriptions. If you're paying for a bunch of streaming services, really think about the ones you are using the most. If you're not using one very often, probably a good idea to get rid of it. Put it on pause. Just take a look at some of your subscriptions and think about whether you need them. Force yourself to do that this week. And option 3, pay your future self. Now, I told you that automating is always the best course of action when we do our savings, but I want you to move $10 to $25 in your savings as well, if you think you can, right? Do that. Remember that you're paying yourself first when you make that move. So these are 3 things. I want you to choose one, or you can do even all 3 if you want. That's even better. Now, if you are someone who would like to talk to somebody externally about your budget, if you want to work on different ways to improve your savings or pay some debt back off or rebuild your credit, here at New Wings Credit Union, we have a financial coaching program. That QR code will bring you to a place where you can actually request a coach to meet either in person or virtually. This is a completely free service. You can sit down, you can talk to a financial coach, and you can review your budget. You can build a budget. They'll bring resources to you to force your hand to help you do this. They'll help with accountability, all those kind of things. If you are a person who needs something like that, or even you just want an extra pair of eyes on your financial situation, please utilize one of our coaches. That's what they are there for. And the last thing I want to leave you with here today is just if you do this little survey about today's webinar, you have a chance to win $50. Wouldn't that be a nice little addition to your income, your variable income? That would be a nice little windfall for you. Win an extra $50 for attending this webinar today. So I encourage you, please fill out the survey. Tell me how we did. And my hope is that you took something from today's webinar and you're going to try something new, whether it's build a budget from scratch or improve your budget. I want to really thank you all for taking the time to join us here today. I hope you all have an excellent rest of your day. I'm going to leave this up for just a few more seconds for you to do this, and then I'll go ahead and end the webinar. Fantastic, everybody. Hope you all have a great rest of your day.